Florida schools have an 8-hour lesson for victims of capitalism day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the victims include gets like 100 million because they include Nazis because the person who collected, I believe, the victims of communism people, if you trace them back there, you can tie them to fascists. So DeSantis has got a nice little initiative there.
Let's talk about this for a moment, shall we? Since it's come up. You remember that public school teachers in Florida, it's unclear exactly what they can and cannot say. But the idea is you better not talk about your relationship in any way if it's not a heterosexual one. You can say the word gay, as in like, people are bright and gay and frolicking.
Yeah, but that might cause the kid to say, "What's that?"
Right, that's a good point.
And then there's multiple definitions. You know, it's like stare or stare. It's a homonym.
Yep. And we also know that they have gone through all of the math books, textbooks, to get rid of all the critical race theory. And they've bought their math books as a function of it to a supporter of DeSantis. Well, it's a coincidence. No, I wouldn't worry about that. According to Judd Legum, the Florida Department of Education has now released thousands of pages documenting the review of these textbooks, which they had to get rid of because of all the CRT. There were 70 reviewers who examined the thousands of pages in reviewing these textbooks. Only one reviewer complained of CRT in any math textbook, and apparently, according to Judd Legum, she has an agenda. So that's just, I wouldn't worry about that.
Can we get her on the show?
That would be interesting to see.
Right.
Penn America has done a series tracking the progress of educational gag orders. And of course, all of these are woke gag orders forcing teachers to properly use pronouns and special. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. That's not what it is. It's gag orders that are all about stopping wokeness and gayness. 183 educational gag order bills have been introduced in 40 different states. 19 have become law in 15 states. 122 million Americans live in the 19 states where educational gag orders are in effect.
Gag orders?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of free speech absolutists out there in favor of gag orders. It's hard to speak when one is gagged.
It is.
Haven't tried, but...
Yeah. Here's just a couple of samplings. An executive order from Governor Kristi Noem in South Dakota prohibits public K-12 schools from promoting, endorsing, or compelling the adoption of certain ideas related to race, color, religion, sex, ethnicity, or national origin. I'm sure Kristi Noem is going to try and protect, like, no xenophobia or homophobia. Right. Tennessee's HB 267 bans public colleges and universities from making certain ideas related to race, sex, and U.S. history part of any seminars, workshops, trainings, and orientations. As with SB 623 passed in Tennessee last year, the law forbids training that promotes division between or resentment of any class of people. A prohibition so broad and vague that it could apply to enslavers or Nazis. I mean, don't disparage anybody because they're enslavers. You know, even saying the word enslavers.
Welcome Island People's Plantation owner shoes.
Even just saying enslavers, that's a little bit reductive.
A little bit bigoted.
They are people who happen to own other people. Or you could refer to them as mentors.
Yeah.
Really, really rigid mentors.
It's an apprenticeship.
It's like an apprenticeship, except for you're not actually like learning to become a plantation owner.
Well, it's a perpetual apprenticeship, and it's siloed in terms of the skills being taught.
It's like a patron. Mm-hmm. It's like a patron in some way.
It's like an internship.
It's like an internship, but it never, ever ends.
And kills you in like 10 years.
And you can't go home, and you get beaten if you don't do everything right. Kentucky's SB 1 became law after the legislature voted to override Governor Andy Beshear's veto. It requires that public K-12 instruction be consistent with certain ideas related to race, sex, and American history and culture. All instruction on current controversial topics must be relevant, objective, non-discriminatory, and respectful to the differing perspectives of students. In other words, there's good people on both sides. Good people on both sides. In Georgia, Ryan Kemp was scheduled to sign HB 1084. The law forbids K-12 schools from promoting certain divisive concepts. I mean, we go on and on and on here. So that's what's going on in this country. And remember all those people who are talking about the new McCarthyism? I'm sure they're going to be hammering Ron DeSantis for the signing of the bill, which not only establishes the holiday, not quite holiday, the Victims of Communism Day. I want everybody to sort of like just contemplate this for a moment. Remember how all those statues, those KKK statues went up, all those Southern Confederate statues went up right after the Civil War? No, because they didn't go up right after the Civil War. They went up about 30 to 40 years after the Civil War. Why? Because there was an attempt to create a revised history of the Civil War. And the way that happens is you establish public monuments to build out a history and a narrative.
And you got to do it when it's not so fresh, right?
It's very helpful where there
Wait a little
people vaguely remember about the lost cause. That's why you have these statues up there of these
Nathaniel Bedford Forrest.
Confederate soldiers. Don't necessarily remember the massacres of black people that they oversaw, but you do remember the lost cause. They wanted to retain the culture of the South.
The gallant cavalry culture.
Mint juleps and a friendly how you doing?
Yeah.
That's what they wanted to recall. And the Northerners
Ladies who lunch.
and the Northerners took that away. And it was only because of our gallant generals and soldiers who were protecting
the chivalry,
the Southern way of life.
So then you breed a whole new generation of people who this is their, or you indoctrinate a whole new generation of kids and people who this is what their association with those ideas are.
So why are we instituting now, of all times, 40 years after the end of the Cold War, at a time where China is practicing more capitalism than they ever have in their history, Victims of Communism Day? Speaking at Miami's Freedom Tower, this is like almost like just like a parody. Before a crowd of local lawmakers and supporters, Governor Ron DeSantis signed House Bill 395, which designates November 7th. Oh, is that like Election Day?
Right
as the state's
corner.
official Victims of Communism Day, making Florida one of a handful of states to adopt the designation. Now, of course, this is also a bit of a sop to some in the Cuban exile.
But it's also just a reminder if those kids are just starting to, I don't know, like a little too much CRT.
Exactly.
Reminder.
This is Republican CRT.
But it's not, but let's be clear. It's not like you can force feed this to the kids. Unless, of course, you read further down into this bill and see that this bill will actually require teachers to dedicate at least 45 minutes of instruction on Victims of Communism Day to teach students about communist leaders around the world and how people suffered under those regimes. No word on. Also, they managed to raise like literacy rates, or they also managed to get rid of extreme poverty or healthcare. Now, I am, for one, not necessarily an advocate for communism. Certainly, as we've seen in the world, it really doesn't matter whether it's communism or fascism.
Yeah, Fidel wasn't an advocate for communism at first either until we pushed him into it.
Right. The outcomes can be bad, and there was certainly a lot of political repression in Cuba, no doubt. No doubt. But this is not instruction. This is not education that they're mandating. This is propaganda. That's it.
And more than the standard propaganda, which is in every U.S. classroom about the United States and being this beacon of democracy, being in some way distinct from other colonial empires, even though it's just a more updated version. No, this is just another step to demonize just like the concept of leftism. So whenever anything's called communist, there's a muscle memory for kids there.
Yeah, it's an ideological discipline project for all the new generations. And I mean, that's a reason Penn, a foundation which I remember Penn, they got big when Salman Rushdie was threatened with a fatwa, for instance. They're very big into the free speech rights thing. So it is interesting given how much of the right is trafficking, and we're actually just doing this for freedom of speech as we take away all your rights.
When do you think that they will pass a law in Florida calling for Victims of CRT Day?
Well, that's just communism, so it's the same thing.
If you have a Victims of Communists, I don't know why you couldn't start state surveillance of leftist organizations and stuff like that.
Yeah. Gotta get in and make sure they don't implement violence.
100 million more people could be killed.